Hello, my name is Seth Harris. In this video, we're going to talk a little bit about the organizational structure of the Metatocracy and how it functions as a holographic mastermind. In order to really understand how the holographic mastermind works, we need to first understand two things. Number one, we need to understand what the word holographic means, and we also need to know what the word mastermind means. So let's take a look at mastermind first. A mastermind is essentially defined as a group of two or more people working together in a spirit of harmony towards the accomplishment of one or more goals. Now, it's absolutely imperative that harmony, a spirit of harmony, is integrated into the mastermind. Without a spirit of harmony, you're not operating as a mastermind, because what harmony does when a group of people are operating in harmony, what that does is it takes the intelligence and creativity of the whole group and magnifies it in so much that it becomes exponentially greater than the sum of its parts, in this case, the sum of its members. So quite literally speaking, one person would have 1 unit of intelligence. Two people working in a spirit of harmony therefore have 2 units of experience, but it exponentially increases beyond this point due to the law of doubling, or the law of squares, where when you add a third person into a mastermind, you now get, instead of 3 units of intelligence, you double the previous 2 units. You now have 4 units of intelligence for 3 people. When you add a fourth person, you double the previous 4 units of intelligence to 8 units. So 4 people in a mastermind equals 8 units of intelligence. When you add a fifth person, you now double the previous 8 units to 16. So 5 people equals 16 units of intelligence. And then 6 people then equals 32 units of intelligence. 7 people equals 64 units of intelligence. You see how this scales up greater and greater and greater with the addition of only 1 more person each time. So this is how a mastermind works. You can find masterminds basically at the top of the pyramid structure of any existing business, right? The board of directors, the board of managers, the board of trustees, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. These are all the masterminds that are at the top of every business. Now, the Metatocracy is not a pyramid structure. There is no top, there is no bottom. There are circles within circles within circles, and every single set of these circles are masterminds. So this is where we get into the holographic version of this. Rather than a business using the Metatocracy only having a mastermind at the top of its business structure, such as the board of directors, it has a mastermind throughout the entire whole. Now, holographic is defined literally as the whole exists in every part, okay? Another word you need to know as far as holographic is concerned is the word fractal. You'll hear me say the word fractal self-replication an awful lot. A fractal is a part of a hologram which incorporates within itself the wholeness of the entire system. So for example, I'm going to have to stop the video and turn this around. Okay, so for example, you have, let's say, this is what the structure is based on. So just to go over the holographic way in which this works, you have the entire universe. And within this universe, you have galaxy clusters, right? And for the sake of simplicity, we'll just call these galaxies, because I'm not going to be able to draw that much detail. So let's call these galaxies within the universe, right? Each one of these galaxies represents the fullness of the whole universe, right? So inside each one of these galaxies, you have stars, right? And inside of each one of those stars, you have planets. I'm not going to draw these into circles because that would be too much detail, but essentially you get the point. You can keep doing this forever and ever, creating a more and more complex system, right? So the satellites would have, the planets would have satellites, et cetera, et cetera. So here in a nutshell is basically the organizational system of our universe at large, right? And that is what the Metatocracy is based on. Why? Because the universe at large just so happens to be the simplest version of nature's own organizational system at work, right? You can see the exact same organizational system in a forest, but in a forest it's going to look a lot more complex because you have the trees and the flora and the fauna and the different animals coming into the mix, creating this ecosystem. Yes, it follows the same methodology, but visually it doesn't quite look the same as this methodology, but it is the same as this methodology. Just like a business, for example, won't look like this, but the organization of how the people operate within that business functions according to this organizational system. So the universe, therefore, is the absolute simplest version as a visual representation of this organizational system called the Metatocracy and how it functions. So now let's actually dive into the organizational system itself, and that'll have to do. Now basically, each one of these circles that were here before, every single one of those circles within circles was a fractal self-replication of the whole system, right? So each one of them is actually found within another. We're going to go through this step by step and show you the organizational structure of the Metatocracy. And it all starts with this, right? That right there represents the CEO of a business, what we typically call the CEO. And this, because it's based off of, the simplified organizational system of the universe, the CEO of a business we call the universal core, right? Like at the center of the universe, there's a black hole. That's the core of the universe. Well, here, the UC, or universal core, is the central leader, if you will, of that business, right? The guy who gets it started or the guy who keeps it running, okay? So this whole large circle around that CEO represents the entire organization, the entire business, aka the entire universe. The universal core in the universe has an electromagnetic field that surrounds the entire universe. Much the same way, our universal core, or UC of a business, has a sphere of influence that surrounds the entire business, okay? Now, let's take a look at the central management of this organization, okay? So orbiting around this universal core are going to be your, again, we'll stick with the absolute simplest version possible. We'll call them galaxies rather than galaxy clusters, right? So here you have your universal core with its orbiting galactic clusters, right? These are the galactic cluster cores, okay? In today's businesses, this would make up what we call the board of directors. Each one of these being the directors of various departments. These departments would be these departments. Okay? Now, each one of these larger circles here are basically fractal self-replications of these smaller circles orbiting around the UC, right? So if we zoomed in on one of these circles, right, what we end up with is one of these circles, at their center of which is the very same galactic cluster core, right? At the center of each one of these. It's the same person, right? All we're doing with each one of these larger ones is we're zooming in on these smaller guys. So you now have your galactic cluster cores in, at the center of these, around which orbit their managers, the stars, right? Which are at the center of their own holosphere. Now, if we were to take one of these circles, we could just as easily, here, I'll do it over here, right? So we have here, 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 and here. Now, if we wanted to zoom in on, say, this guy here, we would get another large circle like that, at the center of which is this guy, the star. Orbiting around that are its planets, right? Which are also at the center of their own holosphere. Holosphere is what I call the sphere of influence, right? And so we could also zoom in more on that planetary structure where the planet sits at the center around which orbit satellites, right? And so this is basically how this model works. That's the organizational structure in a nutshell, basically. So you have, right, that zooms in to become that, which zooms in to become that, which zooms in to become that, right? These are all the different layers within the Metatocracy. If you were to view this on computer software, you would really only see this middle part. And then say you wanted to zoom in on this guy, you would double click, and so then you would zoom in and you'd see just that instead of seeing the rest of it. If you wanted to see what was going on here, you just double click on that and you would zoom in and you would see what's going on there, right? Or you can double click back and zoom back out and zoom back out. So really, this here is the entire structure of the business. Everything within this business and all the people within this business are within these spheres of influence. Everything is really within this sphere of influence. See, if I double clicked on this, remember this was the first thing we drew, if I double clicked on this, it would zoom in and we would see this, right? So that's the structure in a nutshell, where it's holographic by nature, right? It all starts with just this one guy in the middle, and you can zoom in on that to greater and greater detail where you get all of this stuff, right? And like this, every layer of the business replicates the same structure as the board of directors, making each one of these holospheres of different people doing different tasks, turns them into masterminds so that they can operate as a mastermind. And just like the mastermind at the center of the organization, they have an increase in units of intelligence and creativity that allow them to better be able to solve problems. Furthermore, it allows the entire organization as a whole to operate as a holographic mastermind. So, number one, not only are you getting, each one of these masterminds individually has multiple exponential units of intelligence, more than what it otherwise would have by the sum of its members because of it operating as a mastermind, but you also get each one of those values not just being added to all the other values of every other mastermind together, but also continually exponentially creating even more intelligence. So for example, if this guy had 64 units and this guy had 32 units and this guy had 16 units and this guy had 64 units, you're not just adding those units together for a couple hundred units, you're literally, they double each other. So if you add two of them together, they double each other. But when you get the third one involved, that doubles their original. And then you get a fourth one mastermind involved and that doubles that original, and so on and so forth. So if you have an organization of, say, 49 people, right? That would be the basic 7 times 7 here, right? If you have an organization of 49 people, each one of these 7 different masterminds creates 64 units of intelligence. But when you take those 64 units of intelligence each, right, the first two equal 128 units of intelligence. When you add the next one, you're squaring the original 128. Add the next one, doubling the original 128. When you add the fourth one, you're doubling 128 doubled, which is like 256 doubled is 512. And then you're doubling the 512 for this one, which gives you 1024. Then you're doubling the 1024 for 2048, and then finally you double that one more time. You have over 4,000 units of intelligence from one organization with only 49 people in it. How many problems do you think that can solve with that much intelligence? Again, the intelligence is based on them working in a spirit of harmony. Okay, that's very important. If the spirit of harmony isn't there, then the exponential increase in intelligence will not happen, okay? So it's absolutely imperative that there's a spirit of harmony. Now, the nice thing about this organizational methodology is that it, by its very own nature, creates a spirit of harmony because this organizational structure itself is found all throughout nature. It is the organizational structure of nature itself. And when people are operating according to a structure that is already in harmony with nature, it makes it that much easier for the people to operate in harmony with each other as well as nature, right? One of the things I always say a lot is, how can we expect a society that's organized according to principles that are adverse to nature? How can we expect a society of people organized like that to behave in harmony with nature? Well, we can't. But on the other hand, how can we expect a society of people or even a single business that is organized according to the very same principles of nature itself? How can we expect them to not operate in harmony with nature, right? Whether or not we operate in harmony with nature all comes down to whether or not we are actually operating with nature at the foundational core, right? Which is the structure of our business, the structure of our society. If we are functioning according to nature from the very beginning, at the very core of our business, then we will function according to nature. It's really that simple. We can either operate in harmony with nature or we don't, right? When the pyramid structure of society and the pyramid structure of our businesses is not according to natural principles, it's not according to the natural structure of nature. Okay, it's not the way nature organizes things. It's a divide and conquer strategy that causes all sorts of problems, and it's no wonder that every single society throughout our history has eventually failed, because a pyramid structure cannot last forever. It's destructive by nature, which means it's self-destructive by nature. Nature, on the other hand, is creative and constructive by nature. And so when you use the organizational system provided by nature herself, you cannot help but to succeed in a way that is harmonious for all the people involved and as well as for all of nature. It can't happen any other way. So this is the organizational structure. Now, let's use this to segue into kind of a little bit about how it actually operates as a holographic mastermind. What is it that allows each of these people in each of these holospheres to operate and function as their own mastermind and together as a holographic mastermind? This being such a new structure, I can imagine it's a little bit confusing, okay? So, any of you that are already involved in politics or business politics, for example, especially if you're on a board of directors, as it is now, then you already kind of understand how a mastermind works, right? How a board of directors work. You have meetings, you debate on things, you take a vote, right, on the issues, and you democratically make a decision, right? That's how it works. Now, the issue with the pyramid model is that those decisions and debates only take place amongst the board members. They make a decision, everyone else has to live with it, right? Here's the difference between that in the pyramid model and the meetings and voting and process and all that in the metatocracy. In the metatocracy, if say one of the board of directors wants to propose a change in the operational policies of the entire business, and that's a decision therefore that affects everyone in the entire business, rather than these guys debating amongst themselves and taking a vote on it only amongst themselves, what happens is they send that idea out, right? They say, we want to change this, these are the different options we're looking at, and they send that out to their hearts, right? Their galactic cores, who send that out to their hearts, right? Who send that out to their hearts, who send that out to their hearts. Sorry, I'm not following this along with the camera. So you see how the trail follows. Now the decision is first debated upon and voted upon at the, I don't want to say lowest levels because this isn't an up-down paradigm, it's an in-out paradigm. So this would be at the innermost levels or layers of the organizational structure, get to debate and vote upon anything first, okay? So these satellites then are going to hold a debate and a vote along with their heart, and they're going to come to a decision. And their majority vote gets reduced to 1, and this heart carries that vote into this mastermind, which then takes a vote, like say, all of these guys had satellites around them that they're collecting votes from, right? This is getting a little sloppy, but bear with me. So all of these guys bring the votes of their satellites back into this holosphere, right? Now, these hearts here, these planets, can participate in the vote on theirs, right? So let's say there was, 3 yeses and 3 nos, and the heart therefore gives the final 4th yes or no vote on the matter, right? That gets brought into here. It gets reduced to 1 vote, either a yes or a no. And then these guys all compile their yeses and nos into this holosphere. Let's say there's 3 yeses and 3 nos. This guy gives his final vote that, gives the majority and carries that to his mastermind, which all of these other guys are bringing in their votes as well. This guy makes the final vote and then carries the majority decision back to the board of directors, who then finalize their votes on what they think. And let's say it just got 3-4 all the way up. Well, now the universal core makes the final vote that makes the decision, right? And this is how you ensure a true majority vote of all the people in an organization getting precisely what they believe should be happening. And that was for a decision that affects the entire organization as a whole, right? So in that case, the decision would be settled at the level of the UC. Now let's say just this holosphere here, which is the stars, right? This is a star, and this are the planets orbiting around the star. Um, let's say this is a production department, and these guys want, let's say somebody comes up with a suggestion. This guy comes up with a suggestion as to how we can make production more efficient, right? And so he proposes that idea. Now, that's not really something that affects any of these other galaxies, right? It only affects this one galaxy. So instead of the process starting anywhere else, the process starts here with this one galaxy or this one solar system, which, this guy proposes the idea, and then his planets vote on it, his planets vote on it, their planets vote on it, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. They bring that back into here, and the vote is settled here, right? It doesn't have to go here. It doesn't have to go here. It gets settled here because these are the only people affected by it, right? So this allows you to make smaller changes more quickly to help the organization as a whole continue to evolve and become better towards the future, but it makes larger, more important decisions take longer periods of time in order to reach a decision because they affect more people, and therefore more people have to be involved in the debating and voting process, okay? And so in a model like this, right, we're not just voting on who becomes our planet, who becomes our star, who becomes our galactic cluster, who becomes our UC in the future. In other words, we're not just voting for who our representatives are, we're also voting on every single issue that comes into play, because every single issue that comes into play affects every person, so everybody should have the right to voice their opinion on it, number one. And number two, the representatives at the center of each of these holospheres needs to be held accountable for reaching a decision that is truly in the majority will of the people involved in that system, right? And the only way to do that is to allow the people themselves to debate and vote on all of the issues, and have the central managers of each holosphere responsible for implementing those decisions according to the actual will of the people. And so that is the metatocracy, organizational structure and functionality in a nutshell. Yes, there's a lot more details that need to be covered than that. There's a lot more that goes into the metatocracy than just that. But this is the starting point. So that was a very basic and very simplified view of how the metatocracy works, how it's organized, how it functions as a holographic mastermind. There are an awful lot more details that go into this. There are so many more things to know about this. In fact, so many that I've written an entire book. I'm almost done writing that book. And as time goes on, I will take more and more of these topics and make short videos, half hour or less long videos, explaining each of these different facets that go into the metatocracy, and as far as, how it operates for a business and for a society at large. Having said that, I am a very busy guy. I'm in my first year as an entrepreneur, starting my own business. It's very difficult for me to find consistent time to consistently post new videos, or even, just edit my book, write my book. It's all coming along very slowly at this point. These endeavors aren't paying me yet, and I still have a family to take care of. So that's number one. Unfortunately, this is number two for now. So forgive me if I'm not very consistent in posting updates, in posting more videos, and posting more content. But do subscribe if you're interested in all this kind of information, because I will update things over time. And if you want to catch that update as soon as it becomes available, you'll want to be subscribed. Also, naturally, if you like this video, you like the content you see here, make sure you press the like button. And yeah, I guess that's about it. So, welcome to the Metatocracy. Let's work hard to create a new world, shall we?